Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Josh Twist.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for making it to the session. Who made the keynote this morning? Who didn't stay out too late last night? Actually, who didn't make the keynote is a better way to ask this question. Looks like pretty much just Jeff here, but Jeff's excuse was he was at Hackathon all night, and we'll let him off. Since most of you saw the keynote, I have to say a huge thanks to two businesses that worked with us. So my clicker isn't working. There we go. So the first one is TalkTalk Business, who let us use their app that they built on mobile services. And the second is Mando Group, who are actually the team that built the application for TalkTalk. My friend Gary here is one of the guys who worked on that project. And he's offered to hang around and answer questions at the end if you want to talk to a real mobile services user and not someone who works on the team and is therefore maybe slightly biased. So a huge thanks to those guys for letting us show that stuff. I think it was fun to see something real that was really done with the platform. There we go. So, did anyone come to Build last year? A smattering of people. Did anyone come to my first session at Build last year after the keynote? So a couple of people. Do you remember Votable? Do you remember that app we created where we could vote and I got a guy to come up on stage and help out? Well, using all of the new features in mobile services today, we're going to build Votable version 2. And so pretty much all I have is a few slides of introduction, and then we're just going to go demo all the way. And it's either going to be fun and awesome, or it's going to be spectacularly bad as it doesn't work. So what I'm really looking at you guys is to help me out with the coding as I had last year. If I make a little mistake, think of this as an extreme programming exercise with me and 100 of my best friends. So we're going to have a lot of demo and very little slide where I'll almost be done with this in a minute. Is this thing powered by IR? Is it an infrared thing or something? OK, so since last build, we've launched a ton of features into mobile services. And my goal today is really to try and show all of these features in some shape or form in a demo. So I give you a taste of it. And we have a ton of mobile services content at Build this year. So I'll give you a list of the sessions you should be going to in a second. These are some of the things we've added. So one of the biggest announcements is that we GA'd. So you now get mobile services with the 99.9% SLA. It no longer has that preview tag, which is pretty awesome. You get that free 20 megabyte SQL database. So people are now completely unblocked to develop for free. There's not this kind of catch where you have to pay $5 a month if you're not using the free trial for your free database. We added the CLI, so the command line interface, which means you can automate everything you do in the portal. I'm going to show one of those running later, and it'll talk a little bit to how we think about ALM in the mobile services team. Hopefully I'll have time to chat about that in some more detail. We added the scheduler. The scheduler is awesome. It allows me to write a script and set the time frame I want it to run, and it just runs those scripts for me. I use it for a ton of things in one of my apps. I use it to send emails once a week to people who didn't complete the sign-up process. So if you didn't finish signing up or validate your email, I'll send them an email once a week until they do so. I run it every night to actually back up my SQL database. Now, I back it up. SQL's super high available. There's 3 copies of that thing in triplicate at all times. But if I do something silly as a developer and actually wipe a ton of data, then that's going to get copied to those other 2 replicas pretty quickly. That's not good for my customers. So I actually want to take a nightly or a twice daily backup, and I use the scheduler to do that, and it took me 20 minutes. I have a blog post that shows you how to do it. We added custom API, which, as I mentioned this morning, is probably one of our most requested features in mobile services, and we'll have some fun with those today. And we added source control via Git, and we'll be using that a bit today as well. Another cool thing that you may not have seen yet is you can now share code across your scripts in mobile services, and I'm going to show you how you can do that today. And as a result of that, you can now also use NPM modules, so I'll be showing that as well. We added the Android SDK, we added HTML and JavaScript SDK. With the new NuGet, so you can get the Windows Azure Mobile Services SDK via NuGet now. That's a PCL, so it runs on Windows Phone 7.x. You can even make it run on any .NET application. And I've not listed here, but of course we added the awesome tooling in Visual Studio, which I'll also show a little bit of today. So today's going to be a bit of a tool fest. I'm going to show all of the things and show you how they can be hooked up to hopefully make a real application. And then I'll show the sessions, which I think is the next slide. Yeah, so here we've got a ton of sessions. The first one is mine. We've got Chris Reisner at 4 o'clock today. That's well worth watching. And then Chris Reisner again at 5 p.m. doing some pro tips. Yavor Georgiev on Friday and early in the morning, you guys should get up. It's worth watching. He's going to build another app end-to-end using Windows Phone. And then going live and beyond, if you really want to find out a lot more about how to do really advanced stuff with mobile services, then make sure to check out Kirill and Paul's session at 10:30. Developing Windows app with Nick Harris at 2 p.m. on Friday is going to be awesome. And then finding out more about the authentication stack and how you can do more, things like AD, for example, check out Friday at 2 p.m. with Dinesh. So what we're going to build is an app called Votable 2. And the idea is, this is what my UI will look like. I can add new collections of things. This is called an event. I can add an event. An event has a list of things that I can vote on. So I can add multiple events using a little plus dialog that you can see down there. And if I click on one of those events, I go to a similar looking view that allows me to add items that we'll vote on. So we'll be able to set up a little voting system. And then what we're going to do, there's going to be one central console that is receiving, that allows me to create the votes. And we're going to create a mechanism by which I can distribute out that list of votes to people so they can submit votes. And then using raw notifications hitting mobile services, that funny Z thing is our old logo from when we were a codename Project Zumo. So that's a mobile service there. And then mobile service is hopefully going to send push notifications to Votable 2. There are a lot of steps in building this demo. What I've done is I've pre-created the UI, but I just have a disconnected application. So let's get started and get ready to help me out as we build this. OK, so let's switch over to the machines. What I'm going to show you very quickly is the project. So let's take a look. In here is my VS project. It's all ready. It does actually build, but it doesn't really have any connectivity in it just yet. I have a couple of models. So I have an event model, which maps to that top-level entity we talked about. And you can see that to make it work with mobile services, so I can save data, I've annotated this with a data contract that maps to a table events. And I've annotated all the properties with data member attributes here. So I have a name, I have an image URL, and I have this thing, called an event share ID. So the event share ID is going to be a GUID that allows me to share things with people over a URL, for example, or in an email. And so I can share an event so they can find it and look it up later. Now, a couple of things we've changed as well. As part of the fact that I'm using the new .NET SDK for mobile services, I used to be a real stickler about making sure that these were cast down into camel case. So I used to have to attribute, when I did data member, I used to have to do this. Let me show you to make this work. So I'd say name equals event share ID. And it was kind of boring and a pain. But now our new stack is built using JSON.NET, and it has a built-in option to automatically do that camel casing when converting into JavaScript. So I don't have to do that anymore, and I'll show you how to turn that on. And I'm getting tweets. I should probably turn that off. Uh-oh, no one do anything bad now. OK, so that's really cool. So I also have here a votable object, which is very similar. It has a name, it has an event share ID, it has an image URL, and that represents the two main entities that we're going to be working with in this demo today. So let's have a look at this thing running. Now, it's dumb at the moment. It doesn't remember anything. So when I run it, I'm not even going to get to see images. I'm going to add a new thing. Let's say we're going to have a vote on keyboards. We're going to geek out today. And we're going to vote on keyboard. So let's pick an image. It's not going to work. And then I could drill into that and add some votable things like an art keyboard, which is very nice. I could choose an image for that, but it's not going to remember it because it's not uploading it anywhere. So if I restart the application now, it's just completely dumb. So it's forgotten. So clearly we need to start working with data and make this work with mobile services. So what I'm going to do next is actually create a mobile service to start hosting this data. Let's do that in the portal. So I showed this morning creating a new mobile service is really easy, but this time we're actually going to go through the process, and I'm going to call it Votable 2. I'm going to connect to a database that's in the same region. Now, I already have a database, so I'm going to choose that there, and I enter the credentials for my DB, and that's going to start the whole process of provisioning up my mobile service. There's a ton of stuff happening now. It's actually going to create me a URL that my mobile service exists at. That's where I can reach it as a HTTP API. It's going to set up my database. It's going to create a schema in that database. It's even going to create a special user with exactly the right amount of privilege. So we're building in all of the security into your application here. so that I'm running with least privilege, which is exactly what you want to be doing, right? This usually takes about 30 seconds to complete. It's also setting up a runtime, and since I'll start off in free mode, then that's a shared runtime. But as you saw with the pricing announcement today, we have ways of getting dedicated, so you're not in a shared environment anymore, and you get a ton of support for a large amount of API calls. Now that's ready. So let's click into it. The next thing I need to do now then is create tables to map to those two entities. I need an events table. And I need a votables table. I'm just going to leave the security as is now because I only have one app that's going to work in this way. And that's going to be this central app here that's kind of my admin console for the votable world. OK, so those tables are created. So the next thing I need to do now is start wiring up the application. And to do that, I'm going to go to the quick start here and grab some code from here. So if you want to get started with mobile services, the quick start is a great place to begin. It'll have an app that you can actually have downloaded, as you saw this morning. But if you're connecting an existing app, like I'm doing today, we have another flow here. So I can connect an existing Windows Store app. I can just copy the code I need and paste this over into my Visual Studio project. So I'm going to go to my main view model, and I need to initialize my I'm going to have to turn Twitter off, I think. I'm going to initialize my client. And then I'm almost done. But now I want to turn this client so it works with those new serializer settings, so it automatically camel cases my properties. So all I do is I say client.serializer settings.camel case property names, set that to true, and it's automatically going to fix all those types for me. So I get the correct feeling when I'm working in .NET because they're Pascal cased, yet I also feel good when I'm working in JavaScript on the server because then everything is camel cased. The next thing I need to do is create a little proxy. Oh, thank you. See, look at this. That was a test. Well done, you passed. Right, so what I'm going to do now is create a table, events table. Use my event model to do that. So our table's now ready, and I'm ready to go. So next thing is to load the events into the UI. I just say events table dot. Now I could do a query. I'm going to load everything in this time. So I just say read async. And of course, that's awaitable. So I'm going to await that. And then on my view model, I have an events property. So I just need to clear that. And then I'm going to add my new events into that observable collection. Finally, I need to insert data when I'm ready. So let's just do that now. Await events table dot insert async. So that's when the user clicks create, and it should work. So let's insert the event. Let's just test that very quickly. And we should see it actually working with data now, but we'll have a little problem. And that's the problem, though, will be that we don't store the images. We don't do anything with the images yet. So let's create this again. Keyboards, create, choose an image. That one will be very nice. Thank you very much. And that's going to be remembered now. And so just to prove that to you, I'm sure you trust me, but just to make sure, there we go. It's loaded up that keyboards again. However, we need to get rid of that because it's not working properly yet. I need to upload images. And we're actually going to upload the images to blob storage. I'm going to show you how you can do that in a secure way because I don't want to create a container in blob storage that's just open for everybody here to start throwing huge files in, costing me money. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a private container. I've already created it. And then we're going to provide users of this application with a shared access signature that gives them a tiny window of time, 5 minutes I think it is, to which they can upload an image to a specific URL. So now my mobile service can be the broker of who can upload images to my blob storage. So I get to be in charge, I get to throttle people if necessary and restrict them if I need to. But the first thing I need to do is clear this junk data out of my table. Now, this used to be a pain, but it's another feature we added to mobile services since last build, is this new truncate and delete feature right here in the portal. So I go to the data tab, I can drill into the events table, and I could either truncate everything or click a row and delete the specific record. I know it's a small thing, but wow, it makes a big difference, right? That's much nicer for you to work with during development now. So let's get blob storage working. I'm going to tell you how I'm going to build this. What we're going to do is we're going to have a script that runs on the server that when I insert an event, it's going to change a property on that thing that was inserted. So it's going to go all the way to the back end, and the back end is going to say, right, I'm going to generate an image URL that you can upload an image to with a shared access signature to make sure it's secure. Then I'm going to send that back down to the client. So the client will have inserted the event. He then receives this URL in the payload after the insert, and he can upload the blob to blob storage. So let's do that now. So what I'm going to do is use some code I've already created. I'm going to share all this code with you guys. So we say await. I won't bore you with the uploading code. It's just a HTTP client. Await blob helper dot upload image to blob storage. So I now pass it the storage file. So I have a new item.storage file, image file. And I need to specify the URL that was returned to me on this object. So actually, at this point, the image URL of this object is null. But after the insert has taken place, it's been assigned a value by the mobile service, and that's been sent back down the wire. So I say event.imageURL, pass that into my blob upload helper. And what the blob upload image to blob storage is going to do is actually going to upload that file into blob storage, and then it's going to return me a URL that I can use to read from. So that the read URL and the write URL are going to be different. So I'm going to grab that. And now what I can do is update the actual item with the read URL. So by the time this is displayed, we should see our image. It should look beautiful. So let's give that a try. So I'm going to run it now. Oh, I have a little error. I forgot my semicolon. There we go. Let's run it. Now we cleared the table. That's why there's no records. So I'm going to enter keyboards. Let's upload that. And now it's uploading. Oh, it's erroring. Nasty. What did I do wrong? We didn't finish. So I didn't add the scripts. I didn't add all of that stuff I need on the back end. So it came back with an empty URL. You can't upload to an empty URL. That doesn't work. So now we need to go and implement the back end for that. And to do that, we're going to use the source control feature and show you some of those great NPM and shared code features. So I'm going to switch over to the dashboard. We're going to enable source control right here. And this takes maybe a minute, can take 30 seconds. And that's going to create a Git repo on the server. And I'll be able to Git clone that down, even on Windows. It works just as well as it does on a Mac. And let's keep our eye on this. So it's still configuring. I can take a drink of water whilst that's working. Does the story about blob storage make sense? Do people get that? That I don't want to just open up that repository so that people can just put blobs up there how they want and then download them. So I have to kind of lock it so that the mobile service is in control of who is allowed to do that, who is capable of doing that. So we've successfully configured source control now, so that's awesome. So we're on the Configure tab. I can now grab my Git URL. Let's copy this to the clipboard. I'm going to open up a PowerShell window. Go to the temp folder. And let's git clone. Let me just do an ls here. Let's git clone that URL. OK, so that's pulling down all of the files I have upon my server. I need to enter my credentials. Now, this is going to get annoying, so I don't want to keep doing that. So I'm going to run a command on Git in a moment that's going to help me to remember those. So I say git config credential.helper store. That's going to start remembering my credential. Oh, it will do if I cd into the right folder. OK, so let's take a look at what we actually got there. So I'm going to launch Explorer so I can show you around that file system. And here we have the service. And inside the service is API, scheduler, shared scripts, which is pretty handy, and the table scripts as well. So I'm going to drag this whole folder service over into my Sublime editor. So we can explore this now. Let's take a look at what we've got in here. I'm going to zoom in for you so you guys can see this a little better. So in here we have our API. There's nothing in there yet. The scheduler, nothing in here yet. Shared, nothing in there yet. And table, nothing in there. Now, in order to generate an address for those images, what I'm going to need to do is create some kind of unique identifier. What I really want to do is generate a GUID on the server. And that's always been pretty tricky until now. What we're going to use now is NPM to pull in an NPM package that can help me generate GUIDs. So let's go do that. So I'm going to switch back here to my command line. And we're going to cd into the service and cd into shared. And then we're going to npm install UUID. So npm is a huge repository. It's like NuGet for Node, full of really, really useful libraries that you can pull in. So go to npmjs.org, I think it is, and you can see 30,000 different libraries that you could use. So I'm going to install UUID. That's going to pull that down onto disk. And if we go back to Sublime, we'll actually see that happen. So right now, if I drill into node modules, you'll see my UUID module. So now I need to add the code that's going to augment, that's going to generate that SAS signature, that shared access signature. Now, I've already created this code. I'm going to share all this with you. So we're going to add a piece of reusable code that can be used by both my events table and my votables table, because I'm going to upload images for both of them. Right? So for my events table, they'll use this file, and so will my votables table. So we're going to call this file blobs.js. I'm going to put it in the shared folder. And to save you watch me type so much, I've actually created a few snippets here. Blobs.js. So let me walk you through this code. So we're pulling in the Azure SDK. Let me zoom in. And then I'm going to do some work with query strings. So we're pulling in another module called query string, and then this util module. So these are all JavaScript modules that save me writing a lot of code. Now I just get these features just to hand thanks to these modules. So let me zoom out a little bit. Here we're creating the host that maps to where I'm going to upload the file. Then I'm doing some formatting to patch in the name of the container that's specified and the item ID that I asked for. So what is the name of the image, for example? And then here we're creating the policy. I noticed that we were saying this is going to be a writable SAS. This means someone can write to this address. And we also specify a timeout. So once I've issued this token, it's only good for 5 minutes, at which point it will expire. So this is all completely configurable. You could make it good for hours. You could make it good for a whole container. You can make it good just for a specific file. Enough of that. So now we've added that. What we want to do now is actually git push that back up to my service. One more thing we need to do, though, is actually use it from our tables. So I'm going to go into table here, and I'm going to add our table scripts using Sublime Text in this case. You could use whatever your favorite tool is. And then we're going to git push those up. And they'll be editable from the browser, so I can choose whichever tool I like. Again, I have a snippet for this. So events insert. So let me save this. All I have to do is get the naming convention right, make sure it goes into the table folder, and it's events.insert.js. And I hit save. OK, now, the shared code and the source control feature is currently in preview. So that isn't GA'd yet. We have all of the other features are GA, I think with the exception of scheduler and of the shared code and source control feature. One of the things we're going to improve is at the moment it's difficult to use shared code from tables. So what I'm sharing with you here is a workaround that will work now and will work when we fix this feature and make it better in the future. So that's at the top of my file here. So you guys can grab that if you want to start working with shared code from tables right away, which people probably want to do. So I'm pulling in my blobs file that I created. I'm pulling in the UUID file. So when something's being inserted, I create a new GUID. Then I create my image SAS URL by using that blobs code that I just uploaded. So that's going to generate that strange URL with that secret magic in it. And it's going to assign it to the item that's being inserted. So this is actually pretty cool. Notice how these two things are connected. If I insert an item and then I change it on the server, we'll send that change back to the client with the response, and the client will suddenly just have that change. So I'm changing that image URL so it can now do the update. And then when we're finished, I actually send this back. So I actually send it back to the client. OK, so I think we're ready to upload this stuff now. I need to create one more table, actually. We're going to use this from Votable.js. So I need to save it for that table as well. So it's called votables.insert.js. Let's save that. OK, and then let's git push this stuff. So let's go out a few folders. And then just need to git add these files, git commit them. I'm going to be bad with my comments today. You guys will be much better than this. I'm going to say foo, and then git push. And that's going to push all of those changes up live to my Windows Azure mobile service. And it should be live in just a few seconds. You can see it actually says here, deployment was successful. So I think we're actually good to try this out. So let's go and do that. I think the last thing I want to do actually, though, is finish hooking up the votables view model. So we hooked up all of the inserts and updates for events. Now we just need to go and do it for votables. Again, I'm not going to make you watch me type all that boring stuff. So I have commented this out ahead of time. So let's just go through and undo that. So here is me creating the votables table so that I can actually work with those items. Then I'm loading them into the view exactly the same way we did with the events. And here, I'm inserting data and uploading that blob URL. So we're pretty much close to done. So let's run it and let's see if this works. So this is a basic data story. It's one of our most used features in mobile services, the ability to upload data and work with data. So there's my keyboards. Let's drill into that. Let's add a new item. So we're going to add an ARC keyboard, which I think is quite pretty. You guys really into keyboards? You must be. OK, so I'm going to upload the ARC keyboard. I kind of like this one. It looks beautiful. Oh, we have an error. What have I done wrong? So let's see. I have an internal server error on the insert. Let me try this once more. We got the same error, which means I've done something wrong. So now we have to go do some debugging. So let's go and look at the logs. Let's see what's going on in there. We might have some traffic from before the service was created. But it says I have an error in there. So what have I done? Object has no method generate URL. So I've done something wrong here. Let's take a look at this. So I have my blobs.js file. I'm pulling that in. It should have a method called generate URL. Is it saved? It is not saved. You guys always save me. Seriously. I love this. OK, so it's pretty scary, though. So let's add that. Let's see. I'll do a git status, and you'll see, oh, yeah, there's a file that wasn't saved, Josh. So what I'm going to do now is git add that guy. OK. So that's checked in. That's going to live with me forever, that commit now. So let's git push that. OK. So we got to the bottom of that one pretty quickly. If that's the only thing that goes wrong today, I will be a very happy man. OK, so let's try it again. Ooh, ouch. Curiouser and curiouser. It's the same error. This is crazy. Right, let's try again. Let's just make sure I actually push that thing up. Everything's up to date. I'm just going to force the service to restart, see if there's some issue with that. Let's see what's going on here. Let's try adding an image at the keyboards. So I'm going to do keyboards twice, this time with an image. Well, looks like we're working again, so I'm not sure what went wrong there. There was a glitch in the matrix. I think, yeah, let's hope that's all that went wrong. OK, so Where was I up to? Right, so it was nice, it uploaded the image, but it kind of took a while, and I didn't have any feedback. So I want to show you some other features quickly. How are we doing for time? And that is how easy it is to start adding the capability to show when something's busy, when some activity is going on using mobile services, thanks to our new HTTP client integration. So what I'm going to do is I've created a class already that's a very simple idea. It's called the disposer. And it implements iDisposable, and it lets me use using blocks to indicate the beginning and the end of something. So it's a fairly old-school C# trick. And I have down here a busy disposer that implements that is a subclass of that class. What happens is, when I created a busy disposer, it sends out a message using this component I've got from MVVM Lite, which is an open source NuGet package that allows me to broadcast messages within my application. There's no networking going on here. So it sends out a busy message. It says, hey, I'm busy. If you have a UI component that can show that something's going on in the background, do it now. And then when that thing is disposed at the end of the using block, it sends out a false that says, stop sending out that signal. Don't do it anymore. OK, so we use that. Let's use it in the blob helper first. So in my blob helper, which is the class that uploads to blob storage, I can just put another using block here. And calls that class. And that means that whenever a blob's being uploaded, I'll get some busy indication. Let's save that. And then what I'm going to do is wherever I use my mobile service, I'm going to use a HTTP activity handler or a delegating handler here that will actually intercept all the calls that mobile services is making to the tables. So now what I can do is simply wrap the inner call here where I say base.sendAsync with this using busy disposer. So whenever the mobile services makes a call, it'll send out that message saying, hey, UI, show that you're busy. And then when it's finished, it'll say, show that you're not busy now. So I'm going to plug this into my client by going to the main view model here, just scrolling up to the top where I create the client. And it's just one of the parameters on construction. So I'm going to create a new activity indicator, a new activity handler, sorry. Let's save that. Let's run it. And now, when I do things, notice how I'm getting these busy indicators. That's all because it's making calls to and from my mobile service. So when we upload an image in a moment, let me just show you another one actually very quickly. Call it test. And we're going to upload the keyboard again. And you'll see we get this nice kind of indicator that there was some activity going on at the top. So that was really easy to add, and it's now global across my application because we're using that HTTP activity handler. Now, I need to start creating some more tables in my mobile service. And I'm kind of bored of doing that. So one of the things I wanted to mention to you was the CLI and how I can write automating scripts that do things like change all of my mobile services. Pretty much everything I can do in the portal, I can do with a CLI script. So what I'm going to do is run a script that I created earlier. I'm going to share all this code with you guys so you can see it. I have a script called automate.ps1. It's going to start creating a new table for me. So when people submit votes, I need to store them somewhere so they can be counted later. So I'm actually going to create a table called votes. You can see that's running now in the script there. And that table will also get two scripts attached to it. One script that takes when a vote is being inserted is actually going to send out a raw notification via WNS. So it's going to send out a push notification to my console here so I can see when people are casting votes. Now, when I tried this before, WNS started dropping my notifications on me. But hopefully, we've had our gremlin for today, which is me uploading that blobs.js file. So you can see it's doing a couple of things. It truncated a bit of data. It uploaded two scripts. So now, without doing anything, thanks to this automation, my app has moved on a step. The clue here is this is part of the ALM way. The way you manage ALM with mobile services, you typically have 2 or 3 services, one -dev, one -prod, one -QA, whatever you prefer. And then you have a script that pushes changes based on a parameter. It's exactly how you work as a developer today. So I have an app in production. I push to dev whilst I'm working, and once I'm happy with that, I simply change a parameter in my script, and it pushes all of my changes over to the production mobile service. OK, so now time to start doing some custom API. So what we need to do now is provide a way to load the number of votes into that UI. So I can simply say how many votes were there for each item so I can display them. And that isn't a data operation because it's going to do an aggregate. It's going to do a count with SQL. So it seems like a really good place to use our new custom API feature. So let me switch over to the portal. I'm going to create my first API in here. So I'm going to say new API, and we're going to call this one load votes, because it's going to load the count of votes. Again, I'm going to set all of the permissions to application key for now. And whilst that's creating, actually, let me get ahead of the game, and I'm going to create one that's called load choices. And this is one that we're going to use from our web app a little bit later that will actually allow people to see what choices are available to them. So I'm going to do an everybody can do that option on the get. Since it's a web app, there's no point requiring an application key, really. Let's get that created. So my load votes is ready. I can now go into the script and start coding. Let me zoom in a little bit here for you guys. So what we're going to do now is code a little bit of SQL. Just give you an idea of how easy it is now to build a bespoke API. I mean, imagine if you did file new mobile service and then took the time to write this code to actually create a piece of HTTP API. So what I'm going to do is call SQL. So I need to write a SQL statement. var SQL equals select count ID, comma votable ID as, I need to alias that as total. This zoom is not going to work for me typing, so you guys are just going to have to wait until I zoom in for you. Votable ID from the votes table where the event share ID is equal to a parameter. So I don't want to do any string concatenation in my SQL here. That would be disastrously unsecure. So obviously I'm going to let the framework do the work there for me. And then I'm going to group by votable ID. If that makes sense. I'm going to group all of the counts into the, for a whole event, I'm going to group those counts by the votable ID. So I'll see that item 4 got 10 votes, item 3 got 6 votes, etc., etc. I knew about that one. Come on. Keep it up. Keep it coming. Keep it coming. OK, so then I'm going to execute that. And to execute it, I use an object that hangs off this request object here. So request.service.mssql.query. I pass in that SQL statement. I pass in the parameters. Now, in this case, the parameters could come from the post body. I'm being fairly arbitrary about this to give you a demo. I'm going to get it from the query string of the URL. So what I do is I say request.query.eventShareID. That's how I'm going to pass that up. And then I pass in my options object that has the success handler. So I say success response.send 200 results. And we have a complete HTTP API. So let me just check that. I didn't add the function, so I didn't quite type that right. So I say function, because it's a callback, results, open brackets, close squigglies, and there we have a beautifully complete HTTP API that's going to read the count from SQL using a parameter passed on the query string. So I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to add the call to my manager client that's here on the Windows machine to actually load that. So that's over in the event view model, because that's where we're going to be looking at it when votes are arriving, right? So let's find the place. Here it goes. Now, to save you watch me typing here, I've got a snippet for you. Let me explain what this code is doing. So this is going to be a call to a custom API. And it looks like there's a lot of code here, but it's actually very simple. What I'm doing is I'm creating a dictionary that maps to my query string parameters. This is why I wanted to show you this. So my query string parameters are going to be called event share ID. Remember how we used that in the custom API on the server. And then I pass in an actual ID that's going to map to the thing I'm going to check for votes on. And then I simply call dynamic, because I'm going to work with JSON. I could have typed results if I preferred, but I'm working with JSON in this case. Result equals await mainviewModel.client.invoke API async load vote. So I simply call, just like I did this morning with JavaScript, I simply call invoke API, and that's going to load it based on the name. In this case, we're doing a post, and those are the parameters, and the result will be here in dynamic. And then all I do is do a simple for loop over the results to patch on to the event object model the number of votes that I've received, so the count will be updated. Does that make sense? Yeah? I can't hear anybody. Does that make sense? It makes sense. It makes sense. It's very, very simple. OK, cool. So we're finished with that. So the next thing I need to do is to get my application actually ready to receive push notifications. Now, you're probably going to guess how I'm going to do that, having seen this morning's demo. So I'm going to simply use Visual Studio here. I'm going to right-click, add push notification. This is going to get me set up in almost no time. So I just need to do the same things here. enter my store credentials. Choose the app I want to associate with. Votable 2 will do nicely. Choose the mobile service I want to use, which is going to be this Votable 2 here. And then we're finished. And we should get that test push notification. Now, we'll give that a run just to make sure everything's OK and that we're configured correctly and that WNS is playing ball. OK, so to double check that everything's wired correctly, we click this button, we cross our fingers, oh, and I get some errors. Now this is worth noting actually. This is because at the moment this adds a second assembly here that I don't need because I've already referenced mobile services. That's something we'll hopefully fix by RTM, so I just need to delete that, and then we won't have any issue. So let's run this. And we got a push notification. So nice. OK, so that means we should be good. It looks like things are going to work for us. Our channel URL is receiving. So I'm going to comment out that push. I don't want it every time I start my app, so we don't need to do that. So let's do that. Let's save. Now, one thing, I've now made a change to my Git repo without actually using Git because I changed it using Visual Studio or using the portal browser. If you do that, make sure you do a Git pull the next time you do some work on the client. I'll show you that because otherwise things kind of get out of sync. So the next thing I want to do now is actually finish wiring up this application for receiving push and doing something meaningful with those raw notifications we're hopefully going to receive. OK, and to do that, we're going to look at the code that was generated on the client for me. So we have this little file down here called push.register.cs. And you can see this is the thing that acquires the push channel on the client and uploads it to mobile services for me. So I'm going to add a little bit of code here because I want to do something more interesting with the push notifications than just receive a toast. So we're going to say channel.pushNotificationReceived plus equals, create a new handler. And in here, what we're going to do is we're going to check the type of that notification. We're going to say if args.notificationType equals notificationType.raw. So a raw notification is just a bunch of data. It's not going to display a tile. It's not going to display a toast. It's just raw data. And that's exactly what I want here. So if it's raw, then we're going to dispatch the UI thread. So I'm going to use MVVM Lite here to help save me some time. And that's going to invoke on the UI thread for me. And then inside that, we're going to actually create a vote based on the data. So I say var vote equals jobject.parse, so I'm going to use json.net because it's really nice. args.rawNotification.content. Based on the content, we're going to parse that into an actual type I have called raw vote. And it just has two properties. I think it's the votable ID and it's the event share ID. So raw vote. I need to pull that namespace in. And we're done. So now that I've done that, I need a way of broadcasting this within my application. And I'm going to use that messenger that we used earlier. So I'm going to say messenger.default.send a raw vote. This is a really nice pattern. The event aggregator pattern makes it nice to create loosely coupled applications. And I'm going to send that vote out to anything else that's listening inside my app. There's no networking going on with this call. So we need to go and register for that somewhere. And that's going to be in my event view model, where I'm going to hopefully display UI updates. So let's go take a look at that. So event view model. And up here, I have a little clue saying this is where we're going to register. Whenever we create a new event view model, we're going to listen out for these guys. So I say messenger.default.register raw vote. So I'm only interested in the raw vote messages. And then I say I want to register it on this instance. And pass me to this delegate, please. Pass the vote to this delegate. So the last thing to do in here is to make sure that the vote that was sent was actually related to the thing I'm looking at on screen. So I simply say if vote.eventShareID equals event.eventShareID, then I'm going to load my votes. Now there's one other thing I'm going to add here. So if there's a lot of votes coming to this application, like literally tons, hundreds of thousands, then I may get throttled. My channel may get throttled by WNS. So I've added a polling solution that when I receive a vote, I actually throttle them being sent from the server to a single channel, and I start polling on the client for a few seconds. That should make it much more interactive. Hopefully it'll receive the votes quicker. It should look fun. So we're going to start polling here. I've already written the code for this. Start polling. So we're pretty much close to done. The last thing I need to do now, I think our client application is ready, is actually build the web app. And again, to save a little bit of time, I've pre-built the web app. I just have to hook up the mobile services part. So let's take a look at the application. Here's the HTML file. Let's just pop that into Sublime. And you can see it's a very simple application. I'm actually using AngularJS, which is a really nice JS framework for working with, if you were kind of building a SPA application with rich HTML, calling backend services, perfect for mobile services. So it's pretty simple. It's just going to list out all the votes. But you can see I've got two to-dos here. I need to actually add some code to finish up the scenario. So I'm going to call an API called load choices. You may remember we created a skeleton for that earlier. Let's go and finish the job and actually finish that API. So over here in my API window, let me zoom in on this for you. You can see I don't have anything here. And that's because I need to pull the source back down into my local project. So let's do that. Again, it's just a simple command on Git. I say git pull. It's going to pull down the changes, merge them in nicely for me, and hopefully they'll appear here in, there we go, they've appeared right away into Sublime Text. It would work with your tool of choice. So we can see load votes that we implemented earlier. There's the code that we uploaded into the portal. But load choices is currently empty. So we need to create our load choices API, which if you remember correctly was a get operation. So I'm going to use a snippet to help me with this. Let me just explain this to you. So it's a get. So the exports.get means that this is going to be a get operation on my HTTP API. It receives a request and a response. And it then loads in the votables table. So there's multiple ways you can talk to SQL. You can talk to SQL using our nice JavaScript APIs, or you can talk to it using T-SQL if that's what you prefer. And then we do a where clause that says get only the ones that map to the query string on the event share ID, and read those out. And then for each one, just to save payload, I can actually delete a property from the object before I send it back down to the client. There's multiple ways I could do that. I could do that by actually having a projection in the SQL when I load it. So then we just send the response, 200, send back those results, so these people can see what they can vote on using this web application. So let's save that. Let's then git push this back up. And so, fingers crossed, our service should be ready. And what I'm going to do now is switch back to that HTML file and actually have the code to invoke this. So to invoke the API, I'm just going to say return client.invoke API. And it was called load choices, if you remember correctly. And this time we're doing a get. By default, it's a post if you're calling invoke API. So we have to tell it that we want to get. Method get, and we're going to specify the parameters that are going to be those query string parameters. So I say event share ID is event share ID, and that's us done loading it. Now we want to support inserting votes from the client. So I say return votes table dot insert vote. If you're wondering why I'm doing a return, I'm just returning the JavaScript promise to the invoking code so it knows how to display whether it's finished or not. That's all. So I'll make this code available for everybody. You can see how it works. But this is the interesting mobile services part of it. So let's save that. I actually have this code running right now in a browser. In just a little HTTP server here. So I can go in my browser, open up a new tab, go to http://localhost 8080. And index.html. And that should load our little page. And we get an error that says, oh, that's an invalid event ID. And that's because I haven't got a query string that tells me what the event share ID is. So let's go and grab one from the database. So actually, sharing at the moment isn't very convenient. I have to go to data. I have to go to events. grab an event share ID I like. Let's take the second keyboards one. Actually, let's delete that one. I don't like it. Let's delete those guys. I love the fact I can do this now. And then let's grab the event share ID, copy that, go back to my browser, paste this on here, ESID equals, let's paste that over. And you can see that we start to load in the keyboard. So I need to add some more options, actually, is one thing we're missing right now. So let's go back to Visual Studio and add a few options. Anyone got any favorite keyboards they want to shout out? What, no volunteers? Oh, okay. Logitech keyboards weren't allowed. Just Microsoft ones. So we're going to have the Wireless 2000, which is a beaut. Here it is. Look at that. Wow. And without a touch of irony. And here is the beautiful, let's go for the Natural Ergo. This is one I actually like. I used to like the Elite Ergo. I don't know if people use that. There's the Natural Ergo keyboard. So now we can start to choose which keyboards we like. Now, in theory, we've already wired up a ton of things here. We've wired up the client to receive push notifications. We had the script upload the votes table and add the insert script that should send push notifications. And we've now got a web client that can insert votes. So if the demo gods are with me, then we should be able to see this work end to end right now. Now, me showing you this is a bit like building an app and then shipping it to your customers without testing it. So let's all cross our fingers. I'm going to put this over on the right-hand side here, showing off the features of Windows 8.1. Let's refresh this guy. We should have more options appear. There we go. So it's real data. You can see I'm not making this up. Oh, hopefully that will load in a second. There we go. And then I'm going to go for the ARC keyboard, and everyone is going to cross their fingers. And so there we go. So the vote arrived in real time thanks to that raw notification going in. And I'm not kidding, that's the first time that's worked end-to-end without me getting in a real mess. So I'm pretty relieved by that. So let's see if we can... We've not taken enough risks so far, so let's go a little bit further. Let's have some more fun. Let's scale this mobile service up somewhat. Oh yeah, let's take him to like 5 premium instances. Scale tab. So we're going to go premium. It's all on Guthrie's credit card. There we go, up to, let's go 5 instances, what the heck. Save that. So we can now support an unimaginable amount of API calls per month with this thing. And then we're going to configure it. But before I do, let me just switch back to my app. Let's create something else we could vote on. This is a bit dull. I think we should come up with a new Azure mascot. So let's create the Azure mascot. I'm going to choose that as the icon for that. Look how we get these beautiful animations now as things are loading. There it is. Click in. And then for the first mascot, I think a ninja would be pretty cool. So I'm going to create a ninja mascot. And then another one. How about... Well, I kind of really ran out of ideas at this point and started drawing things on my Surface Pro. So I apologize for the quality of Mr. Cloud. But if he gets enough votes, maybe it'll be the next Azure icon. I don't know. Maybe not. Not sure. What do you think? He's pretty lame, right? And then, or, you know, another thing that's cool is pirates. Pirates are cool. So let's upload a pirate. There we go. That's an option. Yar. And then what I want to do is actually enable CORS. Let's see what... So CORS allows me to call a mobile service from another domain. Now, we automatically hook up localhost, which is why it worked for me a minute ago. But now I want to enable another domain. So let's go into our Configure tab in Mobile Services. And down here, you'll see our cross-origin resource sharing, or CORS. I'm going to add a new domain. And let me just grab, let's just test this out. So let me grab that URL and see if this is working now. Let's see if we can call it from another URL. So www.votable.net. Oh, no, Votable doesn't have an E in it. Who knows what website that was? That was risky. Let's refresh this. Okay, so there we go. Wow, so now my site's actually live in the world. So everybody grab their phones and get ready to type in this GUID. Maybe we should do something different, right? Maybe we should do something different. So what I'm actually going to do is share with you on Twitter. So if you go to twitter.com/JoshTwist, let's see if we can make this work and everybody can take part in this vote and choose a new ascot for Windows Azure. Mascot. So let's go back to my app. I'm going to use the share charm here. I'm going to share the votable link with Twitter. I'm going to tweet it. And let's see what happens. Let's see if we get some votes. I'm going to try it as well. Has anyone hit it yet? Is it working? Oh, something's going on. Something's going on. Oh, we're getting some votes. Let's watch them come in now. I want a little bit of a race. So Mr. Cloud is taking the lead. He's getting a fine run. I really thought Guthrie dressed as a pirate would be the winner, but it looks like my nice surface artwork is going to see us out and have us done. It's running away 16, 11, 13. Oh, no, Guthrie's catching up. He's coming up round the back there. Mr. Cloud, just keeping ahead. I don't know when I'm going to call this, so I'm probably just going to let it go on the back until it inevitably fails and goes wrong with my poor coding. So I think at that point, hopefully, you've got the idea that building stuff with mobile services is pretty easy, even cool, bizarre, strange things like the Votable application. I'm going to say thanks for joining me, and then we'll take questions in a minute. Thanks, guys. So we've got 3 and a bit minutes for questions if someone wants to stand up at the mic and if anybody has a question. Nobody got a question? I know it's easy, but... why aren't we showing the votes? I mean, the votes are way more fun. Guthrie's winning at the moment with 176 versus 144.
So you've shown quite a lot of Node.js code, and I was wondering, for us C# developers in the room, the occasional .NET developer, is there ever going to be an option to write the server-side scripts in C# or something we're a bit more familiar with?
Let's just say we're investigating that heavily. We realize there's a lot of asks. How many people want that feature? Hands up. Most people. Half. Something like that. Okay, so let's say watch this space. We're looking at that quite deeply. I don't have anything I can commit right now, but it would be cool.
Anders said in his talk yesterday that was all built using TypeScript. Would there be any chance of us being able to directly put TypeScript in there and have you guys compile it for us?
So the editor is built using TypeScript, the mobile services editor. At the moment, we don't have a capability for you to type TypeScript into the browser, to use that. But of course, as you know, TypeScript can be kind of compiled down into JavaScript, and you can totally use that in your mobile services script. So you'd need to have the process at the moment that takes TypeScript into JavaScript, but it's possible, yeah. Any other questions? Should we call it? Thanks, guys. Oh, do you want to know the results? Wait a minute. So we're going to call it now at... can we show the screen? Can we show my laptop so these guys can see what's happening? No? Okay. Well, I'll just hold it up. The cables are stopping me. It's 337 to Guthrie. Oh, 340 to Guthrie. It's still coming in. 345 to Guthrie, 244 to Mr. Cloud, and 206 to the Ninja. So anyway, thanks, guys. Great to get such numbers. Thank you.